This is One Sentence News, a daily podcast featuring 3 news stories with a sentence-long summary and 1 sentence of context apiece. I'm Colin Wright. It's Friday, January 14th, 2022. Let's talk about the news. From Quartz, Maersk can't find enough green fuel to power its carbon-neutral ships. Shipping giant Maersk has ordered 4 additional carbon-neutral container ships, in addition to the 8 it ordered back in 2021, and these ships are scheduled to be delivered in 2024. But Maersk is now saying they're not sure they'll be able to find enough of the green fuel required to power their ships at a carbon-neutral level when they arrive, so they may have to use conventional fossil fuels in the meantime. This is an upscaled version of the issue some people are facing with electric vehicles. The concern that if they get an EV, there won't be enough infrastructure, like charging stations, to make using that EV as convenient as using a less sustainable option. In this case, production of green methanol, which is generated from biomass and produces a lot fewer emissions than typical ship fuel, is scaling up, but makers of this fuel are hesitant to scale too far until there are enough customers to pay for what they make. While on the other side of the equation, shipping companies are hesitant to invest in ships that can use green methanol until there's enough available. So this is basically the same chicken and egg problem we're seeing across many industries around the world right now. From the Associated Press, Ohio justices toss GOP State House maps and order fix in 10 days. The Ohio Supreme Court has ruled that legislative maps made by the local Republican Party are unconstitutionally gerrymandered and must therefore be redrawn within 10 days, at which point they'll be checked over by the court again. Gerrymandering refers to the practice of carving up voting districts, so the eventual voter map favors one party or the other. In this case, Ohio Republicans gerrymandered too effectively, heavily slanting things in their favor, and they were called out by the court as a consequence. But the same is happening around the U.S., with both Democrats and Republicans attempting to tilt maps in their favor, often empowered by sophisticated software that tells them where to draw these lines for optimal political outcomes, according to their definition of optimal. In some cases, an outside check on their power tells them they can't do this, often after voters' rights organizations like the ACLU or League of Women Voters calls attention to the biased maps. But in other cases, the court says it's all fine and legal, and those in office are thus able to reinforce their party's hold on local political power to lesser or greater degrees. And from ZDNet, last year was a record year for attacks, and Log4j made it worse. New data from cybersecurity firm Checkpoint Research indicates that cyber attacks per week were up substantially in 2021 compared to 2020 for their clients, in large part because of a vulnerability in a commonly used server utility called Log4j. Log4j's flaw basically handed keys to a huge swath of systems to anyone with enough know-how to grab them and use them. And as a result, existing attack types, like ransomware attacks, were amplified and multiplied, and some new, more brazen and more sophisticated attacks against hardened targets, like government agencies and big tech companies, but also against random, smaller but appealing for some reason businesses and organizations became feasible, even by smaller hacker outfits and individuals. It's October 26th, 2021. Let's talk about the news. Reuters is reporting 7 killed, 140 hurt in protests against Sudan military coup. The Sudanese military seized control from the country's transitional government yesterday, and at least 7 people have been killed and 140 injured in protests against the military's actions so far. Sudanese protests in recent weeks in favor of a military coup are thought by some to have been stirred up or even orchestrated by military leaders, but it's hard to say that for certain, as there's been an economic crisis in the country for a while now, so new leadership might be appealing to some. The now usurped transitional government was meant to run things alongside the military until a more stable civilian leadership situation could be established. But that transition doesn't seem to be in the cards now, as leaders of the transitional government have been detained and some have been taken to undisclosed locations after refusing to tell their supporters to stop protesting and support military leadership. From the South China Morning Post, China to start vaccinating children as young as 3 amid new COVID outbreaks. Government officials in China have announced that children ages 3 to 11 will be required to get COVID vaccinations as they attempt to maintain a zero-tolerance policy toward outbreaks and impose new restrictions around the country. A flurry of infection waves in at least 11 provinces around China have resulted in lockdown measures, including the cessation of public transit services in some cases, and although official numbers in China remain low by international standards because of their aggressive approach to halting the coronavirus's spread, they've announced they'll be canceling a marathon scheduled to take place in Beijing at the end of October, while also halting travel from afflicted regions to the capital until numbers can be reduced. And from Bloomberg, Hertz orders 100,000 Teslas in rental market shakeup. Rental car company Hertz has placed an order for 100,000 Tesla Model 3 electric sedans, which are scheduled to be delivered between now and the end of 2022. This is being seen as a bold move for a company that declared bankruptcy only about 4 months ago, but the market responded to the news quite positively. And that's true for Tesla, which now has a $1 trillion market cap after their stock price climbed 13%, but also for Hertz, which gained 10% on its stock price after it also announced that this purchase will mean 20% of their entire rental fleet is electric, and that they'll be deploying their own electric vehicle charging infrastructure as part of their larger EV-focused strategy.